Hi all. This is the missing discussion of Dale Ritterbusch's Taking the Easy Way. Okay. And the issue is, I'll read the poem, then we'll talk about the issue. Okay. A friend of mine shot himself in the foot. Carefully aimed not to shatter a bone. Said he was just cleaning his 22 before going into the Air Force. All it did was delay his time by 3 weeks. Hardly worth it. Another guy, actually the friend of a friend in San Francisco at the Art Institute, got drunk, popped some pills, bent his arm backwards on a table, and had someone jump on his elbow, breaking it the wrong way. Splinters of bone jutted out of his flesh, and his face just as white as the bone. Jesus, all that just to avoid the draft. And with a mind like that, he would have done just fine in Vietnam. Oh, God. Dale has this brutal sense of humor. Oh, God. This is mordant. Wonderful. Okay, so the issue that you're facing here, that these men are facing, is people who, by this time, are in college who are being drafted by the Selective Service. And Selective Service is the solution that the military came to avoid drafting essentially young white men who had all been to college. The danger they knew was that it wouldn't go well, because young men who've been to college, people who've been to college, ask questions, and they doubt, they sow discord, and they question command, and the military knew the army, let alone the other forces, wouldn't survive this. The army especially wouldn't survive it, because the army was at the time considered to be sort of the dropping place for those people who had the lowest IQ and the least amount of education. So to put somebody who had, say, a college degree into that pool meant that that person would probably become a leader and might be very dangerous. So people like Tim O'Brien and Dale Ritterbusch represent that. In other words, they're smart, and they see the crooked system operating around them, and they start to ask questions like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? How come we're doing this search and destroy missions? What's that about? Blah blah blah. And people around them are like, yeah, why are we doing that? Which they might have, basically said, nobody questions command, but these guys question command, right? And so does Michael Hare questions command. Okay, so that's sort of the issue. So then there's the search for what is called a $1 million wound, and that is if you're in, let's say you go to fight, the way out, the for sure way out, is you want a wounding which is significant enough to get you out of the battle without crippling you. So this has been an issue for it's been an issue for quite a while, but it's been an issue for the whole of the 20th and 21st century, which is it's very hard to get wounded without getting shot to pieces, basically. But that's the ideal. You want to get a wound which is bad enough to send you home, but not so bad that, like, you don't want to lose a leg, right? You don't want to lose an eye, that kind of thing. So you want something which they can't really fix easily, but it gets you out of the battlefield. That's what you're looking for. These are called $1 million wounds. This term came up in World War II. When the heroic, you have to remember this, people think, oh, World War II was so wonderful. It's like, take it easy with that stuff, okay? The heroic American army was full of millions of people who wanted a $1 million wound, which would have been basically a wound which was too bad. So a common thing was, say, something where you lost a hand. Well, you don't want to lose a hand, but that's it. You're out because you can't hold a rifle. Or serve. You can't, serve as an artillery. You're out. That's it. You're off. You lose a limb, you're off. It's very, very hard to come back from that. Although some recently, in the last 20 years. Some soldiers have. There have been famous stories. People have written books about, people who have prosthetic legs and limbs and so on, and they fight with the army to get back in, or they fight with the military to get back in. So in this case, we have a guy who was going to the Air Force. Now, if you go to the Air Force, almost guaranteed you're going to wind up being an officer. I mean, especially if you've got some education. So it's like hardly worth it. It's like what a waste of time. A 22 is such a low caliber. If it's a 22 Magnum, that'll mess you up. But a 22 bullet. It's like, yeah, it's a real bullet. It can kill you, but still, it's like, and here he is, very carefully trying to get $1 million wound without hurting himself, right, which makes perfect sense. But then there's this guy who gets into this really creative violence, and it's fucked up, right? That's the only way to put it. I mean, this is somebody who seriously injures himself and will never have a fully functioning limb, if it ever functions at all. I mean, a bad break like that at the elbow, oh man. Not only is that not going to function, but it's going to cause pain for the rest of your life. So it's a brutal, savage way of getting out of a war, right? And the veteran, because Dale is a veteran, and the position of the poet is basically as a sort of veteran observer, says, boy, if you're prepared to do that, you'd do really well in Vietnam. You'd be you'd be out of the field and you'd survive, is sort of the implication, because it's so screwed up. And you see this in both Full Metal Jacket and Platoon, sort of two of the most famous of the Platoon is the most beloved of the Vietnam War films, where Barnes is sort of this kind of, it's impossible to kill Barnes, as Ra says, the only thing that'll kill Barnes is Barnes. So it's just a small poem, but it just is sort of gives you an idea of I think Dale's ability to really get at what's going on culturally and depict these different people, who are looking for ways out. But remember, they're educated, so they're not just they're educated and thoughtful and creative, and also very dangerous is the implication. Okay, I think that'll work for you.